Hello fellow sim racers. I've spent quite a lot of time reviewing paid mods recently, so I thought it was about time I should take a look at what I think are the best free car mods for Assetto Corsa. I don't think it would be unpopular to suggest that the modding community is one of Assetto Corsa's strongest assets. Thanks to the toil and dedication of hundreds of talented folks willing to commit their free time to the creation of cars, tracks, apps and utilities, Assetto Corsa has a seemingly endless pool of fun new toys for us sim racer types to play with. But, as with anything in life, the quality of mods does vary. While some efforts are truly remarkable, rivaling Kunos' content in scope and quality, others are worthy of the old adage, you get what you pay for. So, rather than waste all of our time by talking about mods that were obviously created by someone that's used to dining on a deluxe pack of crayons every evening, let's take a look at what I think are the best free Assetto Corsa mods. So let's start out strong with a super fast prototype car. The team at International Endurance Racing have released a pack of cars for the 2014 United Sports Car Championship, and this mod is so good that 2 of the cars have made it into this video, but more about that later. The Daytona prototype from IER comes in 2 flavours, representing chassis manufactured by Dallara and Coyote, with the Riley prototype yet to come. The Daytona prototypes are great fun to drive, and they reward drivers with a sensitive feel for the controls. The brakes react as they should on a downforce-reliant car, allowing you to brake heavily to start with, but requiring you to ease off the pressure while decelerating. Moreover, these are cars that you can really steer on the brakes in low-speed corners. When the downforce is off, it handles very much like a GT car, but in the faster corners, it's planted and agile like a single-seater. Also, on a technical note, the force feedback in this car is very communicative. For me, the IER Daytona prototypes feel just right. And by that, I mean they meet my preconceptions about how the last generation Daytona prototype should handle. And as I've mentioned in the past, part of this has been informed by the iRacing version, to which the IER offering compares very favourably in my opinion. Impressively, my lap times are within a few tenths across both platforms. To wrap things up, the 3D model and textures are very good, as are the stock skins, with all of your IMSA favourites correct and present. In my opinion, the IER USCC pack is a must for Assetto Corsa fans, and multi-class racing against Prototype Challenge, GTLM and GTD cars is an absolute blast. The mod can be downloaded from Race Department, and I've put a link in the video description. So, for a bit of a change of pace, my next pick is the wonderful CATERHAM 7 Super Sprint by Ben O'Bro and Jack CY. It's pretty rare for a modding team to have first-hand experience of the subject of their mod. However, Ben owned the car in question, so we know this mod has started out with some pretty reliable information. This car is absolutely captivating to drive. Lively, agile and entertaining. If you want, you can be super smooth, gently extracting every last bit of grip from the narrow road tyres, or you can drive everywhere sideways, revelling in the sheer fun that the forgiving back-end setup allows. For experienced drivers, it's a car that will give a lot of joy in finding new and inventive ways to make it misbehave. Or, if you're new to this sim racing malarkey, it's a great car to practice your heel toe and trail braking techniques. Moving on, the 3D model is excellent and really captures the character of the diminutive prototype perfectly. The external skins are absolutely outstanding, with realistic dirt build-up in all the right places and heat blowing over the exhausts. In VR, this car absolutely comes to life, and racing against a field of other Caterhams is hugely enjoyable, if a little manic. In particular, watching the suspension react over bumps and curbs is particularly pleasing. The attention to detail throughout this mod is obvious. Ben and Jack have created something quite wonderful here, and frankly, if you don't like this car, you're probably the sort of person that doesn't like the taste of chocolate or kicks puppies for fun. For the other 99% of the population, I've put a download link in the description. Sticking with the theme of open-top cars with, wheels, let's take a look at the sublime McLaren MP422 by the VRC modding team. Now, I'm really using this car as a proxy for all of the VRC team's F1 cars, as, well, they're all very good indeed. For me, the highlights are this car and the much-loved Jordan 191. That being said, the Williams FW31, McLaren MP44 and the various other cars that are still in development are all excellent as well. So, what's so good about this car then? Well, first of all, the sound is absolutely outstanding. The engines may have lost a couple of cylinders and been rev capped at 18,000 RPM, but this car sounds unquestionably glorious. With little more to say on that subject, let's move on to physics. Now, my cockpit experience in Formula 1 is limited to 2 minutes sat in a Tyrrell 017 as a child in the late 80s, so I've not got a lot to go on. But this and the other VRC F1 cars behave as I would expect them to. Like any high downforce car, you have to absolutely throw them into corners and trust that the aero gods will protect you. You can jump on the brakes like a madman at high speed, but you have to reduce the pressure as you decelerate and the car effectively becomes lighter. If you turn the traction control completely off, the rear tyres are prone to spin, even in 3rd or 4th gear. As the car was designed to use traction control, the engine mapping doesn't really account for it being turned off, and I can tell you it's a bit of a horror show without it. As a final thought on handling, the force feedback on this car is top notch. I don't really need to talk about how this car looks. As you can see from the video, internally it is incredibly well detailed, and externally it's a stunner. If you're an F1 fan, this car is a must, and you can download it from the link I've placed in the description. Now for a bit of a change of pace. Touring cars produce some of the best racing, both in the real world and in our little simulated ecosystem. The Seat Leon TCR by Sean Clark and various other contributors represents the Leon as raced in the TCR UK series and has had input from Carl Smith, one of the lucky chaps tasked with driving said car in said series, so unsurprisingly this is a pretty decent car to drive. I'm not normally a fan of front wheel drive cars, but this one is bundles of fun. If you've ever driven a hot hatch like a complete idiot, then you should be in familiar territory. It does take the rear tyres a couple of laps to get up to temperature, since they're pretty much only there to hold the back end up off the floor, but once everything's in the zone, it's a remarkably planted car. All in all, this car drives incredibly. When you drive the car hard, it's quite easy to get onto 3 or even 2 wheels, which both adds the immersion and the fun factor. As for feedback, you can really feel the grip through the wheel. The force feedback is genuinely superb. Moving on, the car model is excellent, and externally it looks spot on to me. The interior model is pretty decent as well, with the dash screen being a particular high point. However, the interior is perhaps a little bit let down by a few of the textures. The scaling of the tread plate in particular seems to be all over the place. That being said, it really doesn't detract from the otherwise excellent car. One final note on aesthetics, the skins for the Seat are absolutely top notch. There's even a gamer muscle liveried car, so you can roleplay being Britain's favourite tea-drinking sim racing YouTubist. If you're one of those people that drives with their ears, then there's good news here too, as the sound is decent, with the engine note and transmission whine being nice and dynamic. It does sound a little bit like the sounds are a bit phasey to me, but this is one area that Assetto Corsa isn't particularly strong in anyway. All in all, this is easily one of the best car mods available for Assetto Corsa, and you'd be doing yourself a massive favour by giving it a good hard thrashing around somewhere like, well, Brands Hatch. Just a suggestion. As you've guessed, the download link is in the description. In lieu of a proper segue, here's another car from Sean Clark. In fact, this is, in reality, 2 cars, as I'm going to talk about both the GINETTA GT4 car and the Super Cup car. The former matches up nicely with the Porsche and Maserati GT4s that are already in the game, while the latter is ideally suited to single-make racing, just like the real thing. For the avoidance of doubt, the car in the video is the G55 GT4, though unsurprisingly they do look pretty similar. Much of what was said about the Seat Leon is applicable to the GINETTAs. These have clearly had a lot of time and effort invested by the creators, and the attention to detail is excellent. Both cars are fantastic in the handling department. The GT4 version is smooth and grippy and quite easy to drive, but more challenging to extract those final few tenths of a second, while the Super Cup car is a little more demanding. Externally, the cars are gorgeous, while internally they're a little bit sparse, but then again, so is the real G55. These cars are both wonderful additions to Assetto Corsa, and the GT4 car in particular helps make the GT4 field feel a little bit less threadbare. Now, if only someone can make a KTM GT4 for Assetto Corsa. If you're interested in getting your GINETTA on, I've put a link to both cars in the video description. Last but by no means least is the Oreca Le Mans prototype challenge car. To be completely honest with you, I am in love with this car. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the Oreca is part of the IER United Sports Car Championship pack. And while I think the Daytona prototype is a genuinely brilliant mod, there's something about the Oreca that's extra special. To start with, the sound is absolutely top notch. The car sounds alive, deep, complex and aggressive, everything we like to hear in a race car. In my opinion, it drives like a slightly more nimble version of the Daytona prototype. The engine pulls like a Shire horse and it stops on a dime. Speaking of the brakes, the Oreca is very sensitive to mid-corner brake input, making it very easy to turn the car on the brakes either intentionally or otherwise. Throwing it into a corner, it has lots of grip, you can really lean on it, but like the Daytona prototype, it perhaps feels a little clumsier at low speeds without all the aero to keep things in check. The car model is excellent internally and externally. My only observation would be that the steering wheel appears to be super close to the dashboard. When you look at it on a monitor, this isn't an issue, but in VR you can look around a bit more, and it's pretty questionable if there would really be room in there for your knuckles. If you weren't already convinced by the Daytona prototype, the Oreca really should have sealed the deal. So if you're not already on the IER bandwagon, then you can download the mod from Race Department, and the link is in the description. More and more, I find myself thinking that we're in the midst of a golden age of sim racing. Racing sims are plentiful, professional, and feature-packed. Hardware has moved away from its toy-like past, and perhaps most importantly, the community has grown larger and more varied. With this plurality of interests, experience, and talents comes a varied and vibrant modding scene, delivering a quality of cars and tracks that was perhaps unthinkable only a few years ago. My final point then is a simple one. Communities need care, they need upkeep, and they need work from everyone involved. So if you've enjoyed any of these mods, then please make sure you give the creators a positive review, and if you can afford to do so, then donate them a bit of beer money. So, that about wraps this up. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, then it would be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you've got any suggestions for content you'd like to see on this channel in the future, then please let me know in the comments. As always, thank you for donating your precious free time by watching. It is very much appreciated. So, all that's left to say is goodbye, thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.